Today we are going to learn about Dorothea Dix. Dorothea Dix was an educator and a social reformer. A reformer is someone that makes changes to something. Dorothea Dix advocated on behalf of the mentally ill, and through a series of sustained and vigorous program of lobbying the state legislature and Congress, she created the first generation of mental hospitals. Dorothea Dix began teaching at the age of 14. In 1821, she opened in 1821, she opened an all-girls school. But it wasn't until 1841, when she was a Sunday school teacher at the East Cambridge Jail in Massachusetts, that her life path was changed. She saw the conditions there at the prison, and that is what motivated her into becoming a social reformer. She saw how unhygienic and unregulated the conditions were at the prison. Those people that were mentally ill were in jail bunks with those that were criminals, and that created a series of problems of its own. These people were being physically and sexually abused. Prisoners were flogged, starved, and chained. And Dorothea Dix looked at these conditions, and it tugged on her heart to want to do something about it. She cared for those people. These people that were mentally ill, they didn't know how to treat them and how to help them, so they just would put them in cages or put them in painful physical restraints. And she saw this, and that is what motivated her into becoming a social reformer, to advocate for those that were mentally ill. Dorothea Dix challenged the idea that the mentally ill couldn't be helped and that they couldn't be cured, and she challenged that idea. She published several different books talking about the mentally ill, remarking on prisons, and to advocate for the treatment of those in the prisons and in hospitals. In 1843, she sent in the first memorial to the state legislature to pay for the expansion of the mental hospital that they had in Worcester. It was a very small hospital, and so she wanted them to put funds in towards expanding it so people could get the right resources and the right help that they really needed, and could keep them, those that were mentally ill, out of the prisons, because they really just needed help to be in a hospital. In 1848, she went to the federal level. She moved from the state to the federal level, and she proposed a bill that they should set aside 12 million acres of land to go towards spaces for mental hospitals to be built, and for that land to be used to help create the mental asylums and have the products and everything that they need to help these people. That bill was passed by both houses, and it was approved by the president at that time. But in 1854, a new president, President Pierce, was elected, and he vetoed that bill, and that discouraged Dorothea Dix. She went and traveled to Europe later in that year after that, because she was very discouraged because the bill was not passed. When she was in Europe, she met with Pope Pius IV, and in her conversations and with her, she was compelled by the teachings that Dix was talking about. And from the conversations that she had, she then opened new hospitals and ordered more hospitals to be built, standing on the principles that Dorothea Dix had outlined for the treatment of the mentally ill. When she came back to the States after her trip was when the beginning of the Civil War was happening. And her role during the Civil War is that she helped recruit different nurses for the Union, and she would set up field nursing stations, or field hospitals, and first aid stations for the soldiers that were fighting and the people to care for them. And in 1861, she was named superintendent of nurses through her work there. She died after the Civil War. She continued as a social reformer, but she died in 1887. But her work throughout her life did not go unnoticed. As a result from her work that she did throughout her life, there were funds that were set aside for the expansion of mental hospitals. Several hospitals were then founded in her name, and founded on her principles. And so through her life, she was able to advocate for these mentally ill, and that she was able to create that first generation of mental asylums for people.